Welcome back and Happy New Year. Look what we have here. Remember last time when Craig made this offer?
And I start working on yours, you can take mine and that'll give you a feeling for what it is you're getting back.
Well, I took him up on that over the holidays and got to see what the new pedal was going to be like. And man, is it awesome. I'm so excited to get mine and get rocking. So let's catch up with Craig in the shop and see how this thing was built.
The Shirky's Machine, most entertaining channel you've ever seen. He's always making lots of interesting scenes for you to watch on YouTube.
What I'm going to be doing is connecting. It's going to sit in here like this. So, and then here's the floor that it sits in. And I've done a little pre-wiring on the switch here, on the two switches. These are very nice switches, by the way. You don't have to press on them so hard, and they seem to have no audible click. So the General Guitar Gadgets guy puts together some nice kits. So what's going to be a little bit hard to do is to have it turned up this way and then be able to have it set back down this way and have nothing come in contact with any of this here. So you've got this wire that gets soldered in here, and you need to have, you know, a certain length of it coming up so that you can flip this back and forth. And then when you go to flip it back down, what you don't want is a whole bunch of curled up wire that's just going to make a bunch of noise.
Yep.
So here's our input and output. That goes to the input and output jacks. So what I'm doing right here is I'm linking up all of the grounding points. Of course, over here will be your output jack, so that'll get a ground wire, and then I just kind of chain it from one spot to the next, and then there'll be this entire bottom row of the Velo board right here. That is our ground bus, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So anywhere along the board here, I can choose this first row and a single wire to connect up with one of these grounds. That'll keep the amount of wire that is being folded over on the board back and forth, which is another concern too. So once you solder something in place, it becomes, you know, rigid. If you're doing a lot of bending back and forth, you risk having it snap off. And then get down in here with my soldering iron and make the connection, and then only fold it down the final time when it goes to where it rests. Just setting it down like that and then looking at it through the side, and there's plenty of clearance down in there. So as long as I keep it low on these clips to the floor of the part that's going to have the input and output jacks.
I left Craig to continue working on the build. It seemed like all he had left was simple assembly work, maybe a couple of hours. Craig explained what he went through, though, when he brought me the finished pedal.
We talked about how the circuit board was going to go in there, how everything was going to fit, and how I was going to make the wire runs shorter on this versus the one that I built for myself, the gold pedal. Yeah. I thought I had it all figured out until I went to go put this part, which was all one piece.
Yeah, the bottom plate.
Yeah, the bottom and the two sides was all one piece. And I realized, how am I going to clear the board with the jacks? I sat at my workbench and kicked myself for a little while and just said, no, there's got to be some other way. So what I did was I just cut the center part of the bottom plate out, and just made it two sides that I could basically just lay out like that.
Okay.
And then so I was able to make my wire connections for the jacks, fold it in, and then the original pedal had screws, 4 screws, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was able to use these screws here because it didn't make contact with anything, but your circuit board goes right up to pretty much right up to the edge, like along here. So what I did was I made some little plastic screws out of some plastic dowel that I took and threaded, and basically just wound those in there far enough to keep these sides from swinging out this way on the pivot. And then I made this little plate to just snap down in there like that. The friction of how it's stuck in here, and double-sided tape along here and here, and then your tape for your pedal board is what holds it all kind of together. And it covers the little plastic screws so they aren't going to work their way out, and it can still easily be opened back up. You'd have to just tear the tape off, unscrew the screws, and it can swing open. Really, the only time that people have their pedals open is to change the battery, and we opted to go with no battery since there was no room, and since you don't use batteries on your pedal board. So was when I did finally get it all put together, put power to it, and your LEDs did not light up. So I started doing a little troubleshooting, and what was odd was that I had continuity between the ground point of the power jack and the ground point of the board, the bus that's on the circuit board. All the other ground points in there had continuity. If I took my probe and put it on the ground point, the black probe, and the red probe on the power jack, plus 9 volts, I was not getting any 9 volts between the ground on the board and terminal on the power jack. But if I moved the black probe over to the ground lug on the power jack, I was getting 9 volts. An alligator clip with a little wire lead on it, and made a little jumper that went between the board bus, ground lug on the power jack, and voila, I had 9 volts. The LEDs came on. So I'm like going, great, I got it done. So I go plug it in, right? And first I start with the clean boost side. Oh yes, it works. I go to the overdrive side. Squeal, 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 and a couple hours of troubleshooting on it, I discovered that pin 3 and pin 5 on the dual op amp chip, there was continuity between those two. I apparently had not completely cut one of the traces that needed to be. Once I got that cut, got everything put back together, and it works.
And here it is.
It took a little doing, but it did finally come together. So on the clean boost side, we used a JRC 4558, and I think it's a D or something like that. A new old stock chip. You can't really get them anymore. You can get generic 4558s, but this one's, you know,
Old school, if you will.
Yeah. And then on the overdrive side, we used a TLO 72 op amp. They're very common.
Okay.
Very common. If they are compatible pin out wise, so you could swap something different in there. So for instance, the same pin out on the 4558 is the same pin out on the TLO 72. So those are interchangeable, and there's many more that can be used as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping for. No question about it, Craig's talents and skills know few bounds. It's extra cool knowing that this new pedal is built into the switch box from the Marshall JTM 30 we flipped. And don't get me wrong, I certainly like the MXR Wild Overdrive pedal. It just doesn't compare to the custom tone of the new Craigar Electronics DoubleDrive. We'll see you next time.
Shirky's machine, most entertaining channel you've ever seen. He's always making lots of interesting scenes for you to watch on YouTube.